think psilocybin has helped me accept and love myself even more than the point I had gotten to. I thought I was like pretty secure and good. And then I would have trips where I would just feel absolutely overwhelmed by a sense of gratitude for myself and for who I am.
The amazing thing about the mushrooms is that they speak. They talk to you. They will answer questions, carry on conversations.
What's up, my fans, my friends, my listeners, the audience? Thank you for returning. If you're new here to the show, Psilocybin Says, thanks for joining. Like I said, be on the lookout for some branding changes in the last episode. That's coming. I just want to keep reminding you all so that when it happens that you're not like, what the heck is this? Where did my show go? It's going to be the same show, just a little bit different look. All right, so this episode today is... whoa, you are going to be blown away, honestly. Mikhail Schultz is a sanctuary member, but that's really not why he's here. Why he is on the show is because he has a powerful story, very moving story, about coming to terms with his sexuality. Mikhail is a gay man, a drag queen. He started to transition and changed his mind. He was basically kidnapped and sent to conversion therapy when he was really young. It's a powerful story, and far too many people probably have the same story. Excuse me. So this is one that speaks for itself. I got nothing else to say, y'all. Just listen to this episode. Give some props to Mikhail for his courage in sharing this story, sharing his journey, and give us some comments on the YouTube. Share this video. Tell your friends about it. Tell your friends about Psilocybin Says, even though it's going to be a new name pretty soon. But, well, again, that's to come. All right. Thank you so much, and see you on the other side of the mushroom. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Psilocybin Says. Today I'm here with Mikhail. Do you want to give a last name?
Schultz, yeah.
Schultz. I couldn't remember your last name. I hadn't seen it. Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We were just here before hitting record talking about the nature of this conversation and how, for me, I will go and straight up say that it's, I still struggle talking about sex and sexuality in front of groups. With Courtney, it's a lot easier. We've been practicing that for years, but even with her still, I recently, like she will surely have heard this before seeing this interview, but like in the last week or so, I've been really like wanting to talk with her about some of this stuff that's coming up for me around polyamory, and have felt a resistance to talk with her just because, like, even though we have had these conversations hundreds of times, there's always that awareness that like it can trigger some really deep emotions in people. And I mean, Mikhail, you and I had breakfast one morning and you shared in depth your story to me. And like, my God, the potential for this conversation to bring up some really deep emotions in you and the audience and me is pretty high, I'd say.
That's fair.
Yeah. But I think it's a really important conversation to have. And I just, like, from the outset, I just want to express deep gratitude for already sharing your story so vulnerably with myself and others in our community. And now here, this is really powerful. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. I have found the group that you've started. I'm a member of Sanctuary, and it has been such a like safe haven feeling of a community of people to start opening up with my full authentic self. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have people to be around to start really exploring myself.
Absolutely. I'm really grateful that you have that. All right, so let's, like, where to start with this? I've been thinking about this with you, and I think that maybe the place to start is just when you started becoming aware of your sexuality. Not sexuality in general, but like your specific, like understanding of your
flavor of sexuality. Because growing up, I grew up in a small town in the middle of Missouri, and it was very conservative Christian. All the families knew each other in my neighborhood. Everyone went to the same school, same church, everything. So it was a tight-knit little community. But my family specifically was very conservative. Like I remember The Little Mermaid was a scandal because her little seashells were revealing. You know, my parents tried to raise us modestly. And
ask Courtney about her experience with The Little Mermaid sometime. I won't tell her now.
I feel like I might have heard something about it, but I'm going to have to ask her. You know, we weren't allowed to cuss or anything like that. We were just very conservative and very modest. And I think I know more about myself now. I'm a little more of a free spirit than that. A little bit of a nudist at heart. And very comfortable with myself that way. So it was kind of an odd feeling of being like, feeling stifled, especially when it came to sex. I don't think I got to talk about the birds and the bees, the technical talk, until I was probably like 12, 13 maybe. When my dad took me out, and that was the most awkward thing ever. Because I already knew everything, basically. It was like, I mean, I guess we're covering this space now, but so growing up, sex was just not a topic that was really ever talked about that much. I didn't know what gay was. I can't remember the first time I've heard the word, but I know I probably didn't know what it meant. But I remember as a kid having dreams and having attractions to men. I just felt a pull, an attraction to men. And I love women. I respect and love women, but there's never been a sexual attraction that way. So I kind of knew, you know, I like chocolate ice cream. It's what you like. It's what you crave. But
so at that time, at 12, when your dad took you out and gave you that talk, you had already known.
So the way I found out about gay was a girl from my church youth group she saw me. She knew what was going on there. So she's like, well, let's go to Borders bookstore. And we go to a Borders bookstore, and they had a gay and lesbian section. So we walked over there, and I'm looking at the covers of these books, and two men kissing and two women this or that. And, you know, and they have like some homoerotica in there with all these other gay books of sorts. And I just remember being like, that's a thing? Like, that's me.
How old were you?
I think I was maybe 11 at that point. And I remember feeling maybe anger towards my parents of like, why didn't you tell me that? Like, what else aren't you telling me? So I started feeling a little kind of resentful that I wasn't being presented with my options. And strangely, though, the girl that took me to that Borders bookstore, for whatever reason, she called and told my parents that she thought I was gay. So I didn't even get a chance. I was sat down and told, you're not going to be gay, basically, is kind of how that conversation went.
How soon after that bookstore visit did that conversation happen?
Like the next day.
Okay.
I think it was like the next day my parents sat me down, and, you know, you feel like you're getting in trouble over just going to a bookstore. Like, that started my, I guess, more of those feelings of resentment towards my parents. I just felt like they weren't going to appreciate me for who I was. I started having that little feeling like something's must be wrong with this, but I don't see why. It feels natural to me.
Again, like, I sincerely only when you go as far as you are really comfortable with this, but like, I'm just so curious, like, as a child, like, after that conversation, I don't know if I want to cry right now, but like, how did you deal with that? Like, when you had that conversation, do you remember, like, did you go to your room and how did you respond?
I don't remember having a particularly strong response. I think I had some feelings of anger towards my parents because I didn't understand how something that felt natural could be wrong. And like it felt like they were presenting it like you don't have to be this way.
Did they bring in the fire and brimstone at that point?
Yes, my parents aren't the type to. They're pretty calm and very articulate people, very educated. So they never got dramatic with stuff.
Okay.
But they made sure that I knew that the Bible says it's wrong, and that's a life that I didn't have to lead. Is kind of the approach they were taking to it. I honestly, I don't remember having like super strong emotional reactions to it. I think more anger than anything. Like, well, fuck you then. Like, I didn't understand how I was supposed to be different. So it caused a lot of tension in the house. I remember, so like that was 11, 12, probably about 12, 13. I remember like at night, I would just sneak out of the house and go walk around the neighborhood. It felt free. It felt like I didn't think of it as rebelling. I just thought of it as like living my own life. But that kind of stuff made them nervous. So they got more strict. I got more angry. It just was very tense at home. But yeah, they didn't allow me to hang out with that girl from youth group anymore. Thought she was a bad influence after that. And
how did you respond to her for calling your parents? Did you ever have a conversation with her?
I don't think I ever talked with her about that.
Wow.
I saw her a couple years later, but I don't think I ever brought that up. Because I also am pretty grateful that she helped that process happen.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not too mad at her, but I do wish the process had gone differently overall, but it is what it is. But it basically, my parents just got more controlling. And as a teenager, when you're starting to want to branch out and explore the world, that was a really hard combination. I've shared with you, I used to figure skate. And so in the training environment, I was there for like 6 to 8 hours a day, sometimes at a rink, and not many other skaters there. Well, there was one older guy there that was very flamboyant. He was the first openly gay person that I met. And I'm very grateful that he was so kind and, saw himself in me. And I remember him telling me, "You're going to be okay. I promise you." I do kind of remember getting emotional telling him about like my parents aren't okay with it.
Okay.
You're going to be okay. So I had someone that was a good role model. My parents respected Philip. And so I did have somebody that was like, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to be like,
okay,
maybe I will be fine. There was another boy I skated with that we flirted a bit, and I think he was just coming out too. So there was a little experimentation there, but I didn't really have a lot of exposure to gayness, especially at that time in pop culture. There just weren't many gay role models that were positive.
What are we talking about here? Like late 90s? Or?
Late 90s, yeah. Late 90s.
Oh, yeah. TV was still making fun of gay. Like there was still, yeah.
It was a joke, or
Yeah.
the gays were dramatic, or they were messy, or they were nightlife, clubs and drugs and all that. So it wasn't a great view. So in hindsight, I think my parents were more concerned that I grow up and get an education and get a good job and not be worried with that. But I didn't see it that way. And I was like, I need to find out what this is, and I need to find out who I am so I can, because that is me. Like, how am I supposed to not explore that? And like that, it was important to me to find out who I was.
Well, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge here that sexuality is fundamental to identity.
Absolutely.
And like it's, as you were saying, like this is a topic that we are so apprehensive to discuss in public or in community, and yet it is fundamental to who we are.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's aspects of sexuality. There's like your sexual identity. There's sexual health and reproduction. There's aspects of it. I think one of the questions and prompts that you had sent, I kind of was like, oh, that's an interesting topic. It's like, what happens if you try to repress your sexuality? I dabbled in that. It didn't go so well. I think to try to repress your sexual urges is to try to change a part of who you are. That's just never healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to get by when it came to my family at that time, and like, I'll be 18 soon and I'll be able to go out and figure myself out, but it was very stifling. So yeah, there was a lot of just tension at home. I did run away from home. This is back when internet chat rooms were the way you met people. And I would sneak down to the computer at night, and I think it was gay.com at the time, and would just talk with gay guys. And met one in particular. I think he was in his late 30s at the time. I had to have been probably 14, and was just telling him how tense it felt at home. And so yeah, I ran away, and he let me stay at his place with him for a couple days. I was gone. That really freaked my parents out. But it was like a taste of freedom. He took me to a gay coffee house and just got to see the gays in their natural habitat, right? And then walked in my parents, the police, and the youth pastor. I don't know how they figured out. I might have checked that place out, but talk about mortified of like being dragged out by your parents and the police from a gay coffee house.
They were in there? They came there?
They came there, yeah. They somehow, I don't know.
While you were there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
After I had been gone for 3 days, they had no idea where it was. So they were rightfully pissed off and just making sure I was okay. Thankfully, they are pretty great people. They didn't like press any charges or anything against this guy, because he really was a decent person that was just trying to give a kid a space to breathe for a second. He didn't do anything inappropriate or anything. So he actually came over to the house and met my parents. And they, so that was an interesting experience, but I know that freaked my parents out a lot. Then I started talking about I was going to get myself emancipated. I was determined to be out of there because I was just so tired of this pressure cooker home feeling. So I started telling my parents I was going to figure out how to be emancipated.
Can I ask a quick question? It's a personal question. And, for the record, like, I've had many gay friends, but I've never really like delving into their personal lives. And again, you can just say you don't want to answer this, but the reason I want to ask this question is because I'm curious. Like, you are compelled to leave your home for this aspect of yourself that you've uncovered. At this point, have you had any sexual experiences with men?
Not much, no. A few encounters. Again, those chat rooms were helpful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked older and I acted older than I was. Yeah, in hindsight, like, I shouldn't have been like worried about like a sex side of it. As a kid, I shouldn't have been worried about that.
Well, but it's like, this is the interesting kind of place that I'm trying to explore a little bit here, is that we can have this part of ourself that, even without having a physical or an experience that confirms this sense of self, we can feel so compelled that this is who we are, right? And so that to me is further evidence of just, the innate nature of this is my identity. Like, if I am so compelled to change my physical surroundings to move towards something that I've never yet experienced, but it's something that I understand is such a deep part of me, like, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's pretty telling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mentioned I had like dreams when I was a kid, and I remember dreaming that I was a female, and and it was, I think it was my husband in the dream, and like we're pushing a baby stroller in the neighborhood I grew up in. I was the pink Power Ranger. He was the green Power Ranger. And I realize now, I think more, I thought at first, maybe I'm supposed to be a woman. Maybe I'm not like in my own right gender. And I realize now, no, it's just the only way I could, as a kid, not knowing what gay was, that was the only way I could get with the guy, was to be the girl.
Right.
So now I think those were just early attraction dreams. Like any kid would have.
I hope we get to talk about some of that as it unfolded later in your life, what you shared around these questionings of trans and whatnot.
Sure.
Let's not go there yet.
That was the first time that I experienced a question of trans.
Right.
But no, I had such a strong attraction to men. It just, I remember like there was a scene in a movie where they were man and a woman kissing on a mountaintop, the wind's blowing around, a big dramatic scene. And that was my first urge to like kiss. And I remember that really specifically, of like pretending to kiss a doll or something like that. But like in my mind, it was the man that was important to me. So those urges have always been there. Yeah.
All right. So they find you at the coffee shop. All hell breaks loose. Or
yeah, what? It got really, I didn't think it could get more tense after that, but it was pretty miserable at home. But yeah, I told him I was going to get a job at McDonald's, get emancipated, and be on my own. So that was when my parents decided they needed help. Controlling me, keeping me like safe. They just felt like they were losing control. So that was when the behavior modification program came into it. That was a lot to have, a lot of the stuff I haven't thought about in a long time, but it's been great to start processing. I still remember the night I woke up, probably 3 a.m, with 2 very large policemen at the foot of my bed and told me to get out of bed. And I'm the type, I'm not a fighter. I don't even really argue if there's something like crazy like that happening. I'm just going to roll with it. So I got out of bed and put clothes on, and they took a belt, put it around my waist. So they had like straps to hold me by. And my parents are across the hall in their bedroom doorway, and nobody was telling me what was happening.
Jesus.
They took me out to a van my dad came with, and I don't know. I think the shock, maybe it was easier to play a sad victim in that situation than to like get riled up about it. Maybe if I can just get some pity on me. So I just was very quiet, and we got to the airport. I didn't even know where we were going. Ended up being Billings, Montana.
You didn't even know when you were at the airport? You had no idea what was going on?
Well, I didn't know it was going to be a school. I had no idea where I was going.
What were they telling you? They just silence when you asked?
Pretty much, yeah. There was a lot of silence in that ride.
Jesus Christ.
So my dad came with me, flew to Billings. He took me there. And we went through the initiation into the school, the what you call that, the inboarding. And he basically, gave me to the staff members there and was like, you're going to be here for a little bit. And that was when I found out what kind of a school it was. There's behavior modification is, I think, probably the best term for it. A school, a place for troubled teens. Now, that particular school in Montana had a lot of court-ordered kids, a lot of kids that had some pretty messed up issues, like maybe gang members, like young kids that had been involved with some pretty heavy stuff.
So it wasn't just sexuality modification?
No. So that's where it was like, where the hell am I? 'Cause I'm
a fucking figure skater, man.
I'm really kind of a good little Christian kid. Like, I don't understand. I ran away. Okay. Like, you found cigarettes in my backpack one time. Like, I wasn't a bad kid. So I didn't know how to even approach, like, how should I go through this? I kind of sat back and observed as much as I could first. And then as I started being integrated into the school, the staff members realized I really was a good kid. And I think that's when they realize he's pretty much just here because his parents aren't happy that he's gay. So I remember my therapist, she's like, well, anything you want to talk about? Because I'm not sure where we're going to go with this if your parents don't want you home. And she flat out told my parents that on a couple of the calls. Now, they were, conference calls because my parents were in Missouri. But it basically would be my therapist that would be like, so is there any other reason you guys, or like anything else you guys want from him while he's here? Because he's just gay, but he's a really good kid. That seemed to be the main issue. So that was frustrating because in my mind, it ain't gonna change.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there maybe 6 months, and overall, that place was not a bad experience. It was just kind of a shock. So my parents agreed to look into options to get me closer to home, but they weren't ready for me to be home yet. So we started researching group homes, other types of schools, boarding schools, any situation that would have supervision, good education. So those were the priorities. So we started looking at schools, and I think a lot of schools out there have very creative ways of marketing themselves or, showing what they offer. But we found a school that had a location in Marion, Indiana. So that wasn't too far. So as part of that program, though, there were 3 sister schools. So it was Marion, Indiana. There was a summer program in Canada, and there was a location in the Dominican Republic. I think, if I remember this correctly, that the staff told my parents I should start in the Dominican Republic. The culture shock would be good. Taking your kid, out of what they know is going to shake them up. So I looked at the website myself with my therapist, and I thought, well, what a beautiful tropical holiday this is going to be. I'll do a little time down there and then get home sooner than later. And had no idea from looking at their marketing materials what the actual reality was going to be. So I remember flying down there. The staff member that they sent to take me from the airport and fly me down there, I remember thinking, this man is awfully gay. If I'm the problem, maybe this won't be so bad if there's other gays here. So it was kind of a rude awakening to get to the DR and drive in this, Daihatsu truck up the side of a mountain to where the school was located. It was very remote, in the middle of the island on a mountain. It's a very poor part of that country. So they put the school there because there was fewer regulations, fewer influence from American government, and less accountability, honestly. And I think they were able to work with the Dominican government to kind of get a little space, a little privacy. But that being said, the locals knew that if any of these kids run away, there's a reward for them. So they would patrol the outside of the school with machetes. Yeah. So I was never going to plan to run away there.
Okay.
But it was a pretty harsh environment that way. And very... they had the students doing things like mixing and pouring cement by hand or building cinder block houses.
So were you like on the bus from the airport and they were starting to indoctrinate you then? Did you wait?
No, actually it was, I didn't know until I got there and they checked all my clothes in, and I didn't even know the stuff that I had, my clothes and things that I had from before, got sent back home, and my parents had sent these 2 large duffel bags of what the program told them I should have. So I got there and didn't even know what my belongings were.
Whoa.
And they were pretty thorough in the check-in and everything. They label everything. That's when it started feeling creepy. It started feeling aggressive and more like a prison. So went up to the house that I was going to be in, and they give you a big brother who shows you the ropes for about 2 weeks. It's a lot to learn in 2 weeks. And it was shocking because it's militaristic in the way they approach things, discipline, physical exercise. It was very militaristic. Yeah, it was just not me at all. So I'm like, oh God, where am I going to fit into this? The house mom. So it was set up in structures like there was a house father, house mother, teacher, a figure. I think, what did we call him? He would be like the big brother of the house figure, kind of like the cool uncle, and the therapist. So you had 5 staff members. Each house had their little team, and there'd be about 10 students per house. 3 boys' houses, 2 girls' houses. And I remember when I met the house mom, I was just very drawn to her. And she was about 8 months pregnant at the time. And I saw my place as like being able to help her. It would be a natural thing. But my house father, I think, recognized how intensely gay I am. And I think it bothered him. So he kept me away from her.
Is this the guy that you said was
Dominic?
Well, that you felt like was
No,
gay?
not him. The problem with Dominic was he was my house father, and I was supposed to be afraid of him, but he was so insanely hot. So that was a lot. Well, that's a lot to be in that situation with your captor, who's also really hot. I just felt like he had something against, like, it felt like he was homophobic. Mm-hmm. So he was one staff member I particularly remember, like, just really coming away from there with strong feelings against. But anyway, so I didn't really open up about my sexuality, especially down there. I want to say there were maybe 2 or 3 other people that were bi. I think I was the only one that was openly gay, but they were like, we're not going to talk about that. So the discipline and the rules for the program were so detailed and so strict and so ridiculous, to be honest. And I think that's intentional, to get a kid out of his own head and just have to follow this structure to kind of break you down, to rebuild you approach to it. So yeah, you didn't really have any time. There wasn't a lot of free time to sit around and talk with the other students too. Like, you were always doing something. There were also level privileges and level restrictions to where you couldn't talk with certain students. So that would change things too. Like, when I finally got to talk to one of the other bi boys, it was nice to feel like I had somebody on my team, or like at least that understood. Mm-hmm. So it was an interesting place. Tried dating girls there. That didn't go great.
Didn't you say that they encouraged you to date girls there?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, they would have loved that. Mm-hmm. There was one girl in particular I was very drawn to. We're still friends now. She's just a really great girl. She was one of the staff members' daughters. So she was there at the school, but not under the same, rules and all that. So we started getting close as friends, and eventually thought, well, if it's going to happen, we're going to pick someone cool. So her father was the head of discipline there. Why did I choose? Why did I choose her? Because he was a very scary man. So they had what was called a certificate of affection you could apply for. And you had to give your staff members to approve it and sign it. And it meant that you could sit together in social functions. You could hold hands. You could kiss, but for so many seconds. It was ridiculous. What? But it was your taste of being able to do that there. Okay. So I'm like, well, let's see what this is about. So they actually, when you got your certificate, they made you kiss in front of the whole church. Like, it was just weird stuff. Wow. But I sat down with her dad during lunch one day to ask his permission. And I remember just holding my sandwich the whole time. I don't think I ate any of it, like with fingers going through it. And was like, I really like Bethany and would like to be able to date her. And he looked at me and he said, why would I want my daughter to date somebody with AIDS?
What?
Yeah. I was like, yeah. All this new stuff about like a gay identity, but I didn't think about it. I hadn't been exposed to, I hadn't been having, I didn't think about that at all. It was, at the time, it was just kind of like, okay, so no, like I don't have AIDS, first of all. Like, what a random, weird thing to say. Actually, Bethany mentioned that when I last talked to her on the phone. She's like, I remember you being really upset about that. I was like, well, I just didn't get it. So it felt like I wasn't going to win then. If I'm too gay or have AIDS and can't date girls, well, then what do I do? So I think that was when I let go of that idea of trying to be different. Trying to remember if I met, my parents introduced me at one point. I'm trying to remember if I met him before I went to the program or after. They introduced me to an ex-gay. And really nice guy. Gay as a picnic basket. Really animated, very charming. Like, everybody loved George. And my parents encouraged, me to hang out with him. And I appreciate they did that. But I always remember just looking at him like thinking, so you just don't sleep with men, but you're still all this?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
did you have conversations like that with him?
I don't think I fully felt comfortable at the time. I felt like he was in on my parents' agenda. Mm-hmm. So he was cool to hang out with. And it was nice to see a wholesome, respectable person. I think where I was confused was, I can't remember if he would call himself an ex-gay, but essentially he was just celibate.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't imagine this loving Christian God giving you urges and saying don't act on it. Mm-hmm. What kind of life would that be, to deny yourself a partner or a companion or whatever? Mm-hmm. It just didn't make sense to me. My parents had also, I think at one point, considered me going to Exodus International, which was a well-known ex-gay group. It was a huge group. They would have these huge conferences and go pray the gay away. Come to find out, there's now a documentary about the founders who are all still very gay and knew it at the time. These scams come up.
Wow.
Just like the behavior modification.
Hold on, they were scamming. They were living a gay life, and then,
or they were honestly trying at the time, but then got out of that and realized, well, that was a crock of shit, and are now leading like healthy, happy lives. But I think there's so much repression, especially in Christianity and some of these religions that say it's not okay, that when faced with the option of like losing your family and friends and community to pursue that, maybe it's easier just to let that go. There's a lot of pressure in that. I just never felt personally like giving into it, but that's a lot of different layers people have to go through with that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, last night I got really high and went and meditated, and just like it baffles me to no end that my parents are willing to, and siblings are willing to, have no relationship with me, my wife, or my children because we are polyamorous. And I'm not going to change who I am for them. I did for a very long time for everybody. I didn't acknowledge, I didn't accept. I tried to live this tortured life of, marriage and a monogamous, and I was fucking suicidal over it, honest to God, because I'd fall in love and then I couldn't pursue it, and so anyway, feel you, and I really admire and respect that you have been and continue to like, stand up for who you are.
You know, as the years have gone on, I've discovered the art of picking your battles and maybe not needing to have that conversation with my parents. Finding how to coexist.
How do you have a partner? Like if you're gonna live a healthy, open, free life, then you're gonna have hopefully a partner or partners that you want to introduce them to your family, the people that you care about.
Right.
So
for
it's
sure.
like I don't know how you again something that is so central to our identity to keep that sheltered from the other people in our community and family. That I don't see how we do that.
Yeah, it's not quite fair to ask of people.
No.
And I think I recently have opened my, or I am open now to the idea of polyamory. Kind of seeing someone who is polyamorous, and I see a lot of open relationships around me. And I think it's whatever works for people, and the respect, communication, all those things are in place. Anything could work. But I kind of have come to the realization you don't really just find one perfect partner. One person cannot be perfect in every way for you. And if you're going to wait around for that, I mean, you're going to be disappointed. So what is so wild about the idea of being able to enjoy people for who they are, but not put your whole expectation that they have to be this perfect thing for you. If you can spread that around a little bit and take some of that pressure off, I mean, what's wrong with that? So I think polyamory can be a really beautiful thing, but from a conservative viewpoint, that's absolutely anti.
Tears at the fabric of the nuclear family. Yeah. So anyway, I just really appreciate you. Yeah, just then and now standing up for that part of yourself, and I think it's very, very important to exemplify. So anyway, you're in the Dominican Republic. How long are you there? Like, when do they decide? Like, do they decide they can't shake this, so they let you go, or they send you to another facility? How does it work?
So in this particular program, all of communication with your family is very closely monitored. Your phone calls are listened to. So there was no communication about how fucking shitty this place is. Like, they're abusing kids. There was a lot of bad things that happened there for sure. My family came to visit once for about 5 days. Got to go to a resort and relax. But I still had these feelings of anger. And what I didn't know at the time was that they didn't know what was happening down there. So it's that's messed up. To be holding them responsible, which, I mean, they were, but also they got scammed too. So I'm able to give grace for it now. But at the time, I was just still a very angry kid, but I just wanted to get out of there in whatever way it took. So I think I put the gay thing on the back burner for a little bit and just tried not to worry about that. Let's just get out of here. So you try to follow the rules and play the game. I was there for 18 months in the Dominican. So at that point, you start, they have like periods during the year where they'll transfer kids. And so you kind of hope that you'll make the next bus out of there, whatever. So eventually it was going to be the summer program. And I don't remember if I actually wanted to go or if that was just a decision made. But anyway, got to spend a summer in Canada. Cool program. Figured out a very butch part of myself while I was in this rough and tumble summer program, sawing logs and hiking, canoeing. Like, it brought out a great side of myself, a very strong, competitive, realized my leadership potential there, that people listen when I want to take charge. So I learned a lot about my masculine side while I was there, and the gay thing wasn't as big a deal while I was there. So that was an enjoyable summer. And then I ended up in Marion, Indiana. I was there for about a year. And then I graduated high school there. And things that were getting a little better with my parents I think maybe realizing I was about to reach that adulthood line and would make my own choices. So things settled down, applied and got accepted to a college. And that's when I met my birth mom, which was a really interesting experience. She had given me up when I was 4 days old when my parents picked me up. And they were there when I was born. She was 15 and knew my parents from church before she got pregnant. So I'm a very lucky kid to have basically, these wonderful parents, and it worked out really great. So I always knew I was adopted. I'd seen pictures of her, and my parents kept in touch with her. And it was kind of like when the time is right. So I was 17, about to graduate high school and, move to a new chapter in life. And I just felt like it was a good time to know who I really was, where I came from. I'm realizing now adoption, there's a lot of feelings of rejection and abandonment that even though I knew how lucky I was, I had a family that wanted me that bad, that you still wonder, so rejection's always kind of been a theme in my life. But I expressed that I wanted to meet her. So they set up a meeting for us and we had dinner, and it was really cool to meet her. She brought a lot of pictures of her family. We sat down and she held her hand up and we had the same knuckle shape. It was like a first feeling of like, oh, this is who I am. Oh, you like, okay. It felt like a little puzzle piece clicking in. And so after we had dinner that night, I don't remember who brought it up, but I was going to be going to a college about 10 minutes from where my birth mom lived. And my parents, were going to be moving up north. So she offered to let me move in with her family while I went to college. It seemed like an ordained situation. Like, this is all great how this worked out. So I moved in, was there about a month, and had a half sister who's a year younger and 2 half brothers. So was getting to know this new side of my family. And I can only share the story from my perspective. I talked with my birth mom a couple months ago and was like, can we sit down at some point, talk about how this really happened? Because I know my side, but I know you have a side, and I know there's probably a reality in the middle of it. I was almost 18. I think it was the week before I turned 18. And I wanted to go back to that same gay coffee house. So I wanted to be around my people. Mm-hmm. And they said no. And since I was still 17, I had to follow the rules, So I snuck out that night, got to the coffee house. And so my mom sat me down, and basically what I remember is her saying, well, you're not going to be going out and doing that kind of stuff. If you're going to be in college and you're going to live here, you're going to follow our rules. I would like to know how she felt she said that. Mm-hmm. Because what I heard was, you're not going to be here and be gay. Mm-hmm. And that's how I took it. Mm-hmm. So I literally packed my stuff up. And a guy I had met off a chat line. Yeah. And stayed on his couch for a little while. And that was when I started. People took me to my first gay club, my first drag show. And so I started meeting the gay community. But I was really mad at my mom, my birth mom.
How, I'm curious, did you feel excited to get involved in that community? Were you always looking over your shoulder? Do you remember how that was? Because coming out of all this behavior modification and then getting to jump right into
the super colorful gay world.
Yeah.
Very overwhelming. It was exciting in the sense that I felt like I could be whoever I wanted to be, because none of these people knew who I was. Mm-hmm. I think the first gay person at a club that I met, he had his little group of friends, and they were accepting me into their little group. I think I told him my name was Diego. What a stupid name to make up. But they thought I was cool, and it was oh, okay. My talents were seen. Started doing drag and was found something I was really good at. So I found a welcoming sense. And also I think because it was new, I didn't really have any preconceived notions of what it would be like. But I was meeting people that had also gone through their families kicking them out, or other hard situations. So you kind of realize there's a commonality in our little gay journey. But I was able to find some good people who let me be me and let me discover me. But it was also a really scary time of my life because I literally had nothing but those duffel bags of clothes that I had gotten out of school with. I had nothing to my name and was sleeping on couches. But I was free. So I started doing drag shows. I'd make enough money to get some ramen noodles and a new wig.
How did you get into drag?
Oh, so a little group of friends took me to my first show. It was at a male strip club called Boxers and Briefs, and they had an amateur drag night. And I walked in, and it was out in the middle of nowhere in Illinois, on the Illinois side of St. Louis. So I remember feeling like, where are we? What is about to happen? And we walk in, and it's the full-on strip club. And a queen is on stage doing Britney Spears. Not very well, I might mention. But I didn't know what drag performers did. I think I assumed they were all going to be live singers or live entertainers. So when I saw it was lip sync and more dancing, I stopped in my tracks and went, oh, I can do that. So we watched the show, and I fell in love with the hostess of the show. And so after the show, I kind of looked at where they were all going in a dressing room area, and I walked back there, and I was like, I really want to do this.
You just took...
I said, what do I do? What do I need to do?
Uh-huh.
And Taylor, the hostess of the show, basically said, bring a wig, some pantyhose, and some rice. Because you have to make your titties. You take your pantyhose, fill it with rice, and make,
Okay.
So,
all right.
Brought my tits, brought a wig, and they put makeup on me and gave me some outfits, and that was my first drag show. I was pretty ballsy of an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Knew nobody. But what did I have to lose?
Came out of fucking conversion therapy.
But I can do that. That was the strong feeling I had of that's, I was going to go to Colors for Dance Performance. So that was how I expressed myself. Yeah. And I remember also when I first did that first show, it wasn't great. I fell flat on my ass at one point, and another number, my tit came out. Because rice in pantyhose is heavy. So it wasn't like a great show, but I remember distinctly feeling so free in how I could move. Growing up and skating and dance, when you're a guy, you've got to be stronger. And as much as I understood the reasoning for that, my body's a little more fluid. And so I was constantly being corrected. And that also paired with, I remember the day I was running through the church sanctuary. It was after the service, the kids are just running around, and I was just running around like kids do. And my dad grabbed me. He's like, don't move your arms like that. Does Michael Jordan run like that?
Really?
Well, first of all, I didn't give a fuck who Michael Jordan was, but I just remember feeling like, what's wrong with my body? It's just how it moves. I'm just running. And I think that little voice stuck with me of something's wrong with you.
I never would have thought that makes total sense though, but in figure skating, I just I don't know. You see men figure skating, and I just kind of assume most male figure skaters are gay.
You'd be very surprised. It is an artistic sport, but there's all representations. I mean, it's actually, I think most recently it's been interesting to watch the out gay skaters finally be out. There's a lot of skaters who really they just don't really talk about it. Like Philip, the guy that was at the rink that everybody knew he was gay, but he didn't talk about it because he didn't want that to be a focus. He didn't want You know, you are at a skating rink, you're around a lot of kids. And so he was 20, 21, and everyone looked up to him.
Yeah.
And so he never wanted to make that a thing. So, but in the politics of figure skating, you have to be careful. Like, so there also was like, if you're in a pair skating, you've got this tall, strong guy and the small female. So there's always just been that kind of presentation to present the woman. So men needed to be stronger.
It makes sense. Yeah.
It's only been recently where I've noticed it freeing up a little bit, gaying up a bit. Which is kind of weird for me to watch, to be honest with you, because I'm like, that's real gay.
You're critical.
Making me uncomfortable. I think that's called internalized homophobia. Wow. Because it just feels wrong to me. Like I until I found drag, I almost kind of struggled with what my body was doing. And then I found something where it all made sense. I think that also added to when I was questioning my gender of like, well, if this is what's coming out, like maybe that's what I should do. But drag was just a great new art where I could express but not feel wrong about it. It just felt like, I don't know, it just came out and then it was celebrated. That was really nice. So I was hooked right away.
Can you talk about this kind of experience in questioning gender through drag and kind of that journey?
Sure. So drag is an interesting art form because it is in nightclubs. It's not a regulated job like a lot of careers are, right? So you kind of work your way through the amateur open stage nights, amateur shows, try to fight your way into a paid regular booking. And that's when you feel like you've started like making it. So that was the first couple of years I was just focused on getting somewhere with it. And thankfully my talents got me noticed. So I was maybe about 2 years. I already had a paid regular gig. That was nice. Then I moved down to here to Louisville. And I moved here to work at the Connection, which was a huge club that had great established shows and great entertainers. So I moved. I was actually, I was kind of sneaky. I saw a poster. I was living in Minneapolis. Saw a poster for an audition for male leads for the show because they did production numbers and they needed boys to dance backup too. So I was like, well, I can dance. So I'm just going to go get myself a job and then I'm going to work my way back in. And that's exactly what I did. So I was dancing as a boy in the show on Friday and Saturday nights. And then I won a newcomer pageant. So I had paid Sunday nights. And at the time, they all thought I was brand new to drag. I let them think that I'd already been doing it 3 years. But so I was kind of doing this duality thing. And eventually they wanted me to do drag all the time. So the other entertainers on cast when I started was about half transgendered entertainers and half, we call them boy queens, that have, a transformation.
Hold on, what do you mean?
That live as a man but dress up to do drag. The others live as women but do dress up to do stage shows.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that was my first time spending time with transgendered people. And it was interesting, like being around them for the first time, because I think some of that internalized homophobia made me kind of feel uncomfortable at first. But then you get to know them and see their soul and realize, oh, that's a lady. The physical is one thing, but you can see somebody's energy. And like my drag mom. So I met my drag mom when I moved here, and instant connection. My drag name is Vanessa. Her real name is Vanessa. Our birthdays are 2 days apart. We just had all this in common. But she's about 20 years older than me. So we've had a mother-daughter kind of relationship for 18 years now. And she had her gender confirmation surgery a couple of years ago. That was interesting. But anyway, so she was the first person who told me that I was going to transition. And I think she saw me and her. And also, it was just a very common thing for people that really loved drag that much and that were as feminine as me. Most people went ahead and made the move to transition. Now, the tricky part is drag is on a stage. What do you do with the rest of your time? And I wasn't quite comfortable with that idea of living as a woman. But then I remember these dreams and was like, well, maybe I should try it. And you never are going to know until you put yourself in that situation. So I kind of came to a point where I thought, well, maybe I should. And I expressed to my partner at that point that I was thinking about that. And he was supportive, but also like, well, if you're not sure, like, maybe not. But I kind of knew he was going to support me no matter what, which was really nice. I'm very lucky. I remember, my drag mom said, you're going to do this. And it was just, I think her perspective was that all the other trans girls, this is how they started too. So you're just following the journey and the footsteps we all took. I think she was just trying to assure me that that was okay and that was my path. So I did my first shot of hormones, and it was my drag mom's supply, and she gave it to me, and that's a little bonding moment. Like, I think she was really proud in a sense. But after about 3 months, and I started developing breast tissue, that I was realizing, oh shit, like, things are going to change. And I didn't tell my partner I was doing the hormones. I just thought, let me dabble a little bit and see if this feels right. And it was remarkable, the changes that happened. I had somebody tell me, like, I was on stage and they saw me after and they were like, you're on hormones, aren't you? You're glowing. So it does, like, there's a lot of physical change. But when the titties started and my partner's like, what is happening? I was like, listen, I'm just smoking a lot of weed, okay? That was like, you got to figure out which path you're going to go. So I got out of the shower one day and was in front of the mirror with nothing on. And just remember looking in my eyes in the mirror and being like, nope, you're a guy. You're a guy. I'm very happy with my vessel, but I just knew that wasn't quite right for me. So I stopped hormones and enjoyed more of the transformation. Actually, I used to have hair like down to here and needed to separate my boy and my female side. So I cut all my hair off and just lived as a guy when I wasn't on stage. So I separated that. And that was good. It was definitely a more healthy mindset for me. So I felt comfortable with that. Here we are 20 years later. And I don't do drag terribly often these days. So it's my fun thing to do. But I have been discovering my gender expression, gender identity now. And it's interesting to do that without drag being this driving force. And so I think what I have realized about myself is that I have a female spirit, a female energy. It just happened to be put into a male vessel for this life cycle. And I don't feel a need to change my physical being to match my spirit. I'm quite grateful I get to have both perspectives, and to have like female sensitivity and male strength. I feel like I get the best of both worlds in a way. But it's only now in my maturity that I'm able to tap into both sides. Like that summer program in Canada, fierceness and strength, gets to come out now along with my female fierceness. So I finally feel like I understand who I am. But I also don't really know what it means. Like, I kind of admitting to yourself that you have a female energy. Now I just need to understand exactly what that looks like. Like, and I think a big part of that is understanding how people interact with my female energy. there's been a lot of times where I meet people and I either feel like I don't know if they like me, or like it feels like they might have an issue with me. Might be their own mommy issue, or like their issues with a female in their past, that I might push buttons that way because I have a female energy. But I'm a guy and they don't know how to handle that. I find that a lot in trying to meet people. I need to have a little more confidence in where I'm at now, or like owning my I guess you could call it two-spiritedness. I feel like I have both in me, right? So I'm just trying to embrace that more and be more comfortable with it. And as I've been on that journey, I've noticed people interacting a little better with me. I don't feel so uncomfortable. Yeah, it's been an interesting exploration. Like I was hanging out with some friends the other night, and there was a bunch of straight guys at the bar watching the sports, right? Well, they somehow got into our conversation, but they ended up fascinated by me. And you can tell when somebody's like interested, attracted, some kind of chemistry, anything like that. And it was just fascinating that these, straight men were not only just totally cool with me, but like appreciated, and like I felt it felt powerful. Actually, I'm just used to the gays being made fun of or pushed to the side, so it feels a lot different to feel powerful in that. So that's kind of where my journey has brought me to now. But now I'm just trying to figure out what to do with this knowledge, and how to be the best version of me and comfortable with me. Yeah.
You are absolutely a fascinating individual. Not just your background story, but yeah, how your kind of the way that you're moving through the world seems to be I hesitate to say balanced, but that's what comes to mind. And I've been really curious as to what is happening with human sexuality. And I shared with you a little bit, how working in mushroom space, growing up a Catholic, pure homophobia, gays are going to hell, no two ways about it. And then moving up into the city and meeting gay men and finding out like these are some very cool people, and feeling like the gay community, I have felt more accepted and less judgment in the gay community than any other community. Still feel it with poly. When I've walked into like a play with two women, it's like I can see people still looking at me like, what's going on over there kind of thing, which is whatever. I don't really care. It's neither here nor there. But I was saying, so anyway, in Jamaica, like it started to come into my awareness that in the mushroom space, that how incredibly important to the balancing of the energies in this world, particularly gay men, are. And it does seem we have been living in this hyper masculine, patriarchal world that is just dominator all over the place. And we're going through a shift.
Yeah.
It's balancing.
I've noticed that too. And it's exciting, and it's also really frustrating because I go to a bar now and I can't tell who's gay and who's not. It's like, I legit was out the other night and this guy was, it was flirting. I don't care what he wants to call it. Let me buy him a shot. And then when I put my hand on his arm, as like walking through a crowd, he's like, dude, I'm just going to let you know I'm straight as an arrow, but you're cool. And I was like, okay, well, all of that was leading me on a different idea.
Okay.
But like I experienced that a lot, where I'll meet people where I am sure he is gay.
Okay.
But it's just like the ideas of the hypermasculinity, or it's softening. And I think guys are totally fine with their feminine side now. They're getting to a point where embracing that it's okay to have one, which is, yeah, super encouraging, but also really confuses me because I'm just so used to, well, and I'm also used to being made fun of or bullied, or straight men used to scare me just because I was just so used to assuming that I was going to be bullied in some way. So now to have them like think that you're the coolest thing ever, like I'm kind of like, okay, when's the other shoe going to drop? Yeah,
Well,
it's an exciting time in the world right now, though, to have that little shift happening. Women embracing their strength, and men are realizing that feminine is not a bad thing.
softening up a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I continually question, like, look at myself. Like, am I okay? Am I hiding something? Am I denying something? Because I've always, not always, but since I started, like I said, moved to Louisville, meet gay men, feel like, oh, I feel an affinity, not an attraction, but I feel like there is an acceptance here that you can be whatever you want. Nobody's gonna, give a shit. But I want to know, am I being true to myself? Like, that's kind of always the quest that I'm, and yeah, I don't know. It's I like I feel like it's almost weird because like there are so many, like, there's such this like embracing of gay, embracing of all the lifestyles, except to some extent straight male, and it's like, am I wrong for being a straight male? Like, am I not a straight male and I just am pretending like I am? But like, it really doesn't seem like I'm into men sexually. But I have this great appreciation and respect and feel an affinity with gay men in particular in some way.
Me with women, so that's exactly how I feel about ladies. They're wonderful.
Sexuality is it's the layers and the nuances and how we can find ourselves in these kind of like unknown, undescribable places with our sexuality just makes it so interesting to me. What about psychedelics? I know that psilocybin has played some role in kind of your, I don't know, how do you say it? How has psilocybin impacted your sexual expression, your sexuality, your recovery, fit into this whole story?
So it's been a year now since I had my first trip. And I think psilocybin has helped me accept and love myself even more than the point I had gotten to. I thought I was like pretty secure and good. And then I would have trips where I would just feel absolutely overwhelmed by a sense of gratitude for myself and for who I am. I remember like being in the shower one time and just being fascinated by my own hands. That like, how lucky am I to have strong hands? And they're also soft and beautiful, and they're good at things. Like I was kissing my hands. It sounds so weird, like, but I was just really overwhelmed by gratitude just for my body, for all the parts of me. And I guess maybe I felt, maybe for the first time, a full acceptance of me. Maybe I feel like I saw myself fully for the first time. Definitely helped to have a spiritual awakening as part of that. That was definitely the first time I had felt, and my dad's a pastor. So growing up in the church, I thought I knew what God in the church was. And it was the first time I got to meet God for myself. And I kind of realized there is more outside of an Episcopal church, And I think what I started realizing was I had always viewed God as like a Santa Claus type, an old white bearded man up in the sky, checking who's naughty, who's nice. I didn't particularly ever feel connected when I tried praying with that God.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I feel like I was asking for Christmas presents. Like I'd pray. I didn't feel connected. I didn't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel comfortable. God, straight men scared me. So that's a hard thing.
God hates gays.
I mean, it was frustrating to not feel the same conviction with religious beliefs, but then I've got a family who my dad became a pastor when I was 18. So grew up with him having a whole career as a salesman, was very successful, and then gets the call from God. In his passion and his, he really loved being a pastor. And I really respect my parents because they have followed what they believe. And, they always say, now I have some grace in seeing things in a different hindsight. They always approach things with the best intentions in mind. Unfortunately, we all got scammed in some shitty situations, but at least they're able to sit down and talk about it now and admit things. And we've just been able to have a meeting of the minds now and some respect for each other. But that first time that I felt like I understood God was a mandala. It was glowing, and it was like just a tunnel vision. And I could just feel the flow of love and energy from it. That was how it visually felt to me. And it made it less of God being a person and God being the source of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, cool. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Power, God, Allah, whatever. It's all, I think, the same thing at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
People just sometimes put different faces on it to make it work for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, the spirituality for me now is clearly this. There's an energy out there that we can tap into. Psilocybin tends to connect me with that very easily. But I don't know, I had just an understanding of what a higher power was. So that was nice to have kind of a personal and healthy spirituality reintroduced to my life. I feel comfortable praying now. And I think just that helps anybody have some hope. I think that word was really important because I had lost a lot of hope. And feeling and understanding that there's a spiritual higher power that loved me. I felt a strong sense of there is a purpose for my life. I kind of that had been diminishing. I just didn't understand what I was supposed to be doing. So psilocybin really helped me realize there's really important things that you're gonna do. And it's been crazy how it's led me to meeting different people. Random things are happening now. I was walking the Big Four Bridge one afternoon on lunch break, and a gal was walking the other way, and I reached the end and walked back. And I'm a fast walker, so I caught up to her. And she looked over as we're walking side by side, and she goes, "You go to that sanctuary group, don't you?" So, yeah. She goes, "I was in the LGBTQ circle with you when you shared one time, and I actually had thought of a song, and I didn't get to say anything to you about it this time, but here we are." So like things like that are happening now.
Nice.
And I'm just being connected to really amazing people. And psilocybin is a common denominator in a lot of it. And I really love the community at Sanctuary because there's so much wisdom. There's psychiatrists and doctors and just experienced and wise people that hold space and listen. And, of course, give advice if you want it, but just it feels like what I always wanted my parents to be. Is how I feel when I go to a lot of the sanctuary groups.
So where do you feel like you are in terms of this life's purpose as it relates to that experience?
Oh, well, I someone asked me one time when I had realized I was struggling with drug addiction and was going to check myself into a place to get help. And somebody was sitting me down interviewing me over this, and was asking, how suicidal are you feeling, and how, all these questions about where I was at emotionally. And I was like, oh shit, I'm not doing so good. And they said, well, what are you on earth to do? And I, not a moment of hesitation, was like, to entertain people. That's what I know that I'm here to do. That's where my heart is happy, on a stage, and I'm damn good at it. And that has only been further confirmed recently in the performances that I've been doing recently, choosing things that stories that I tell, or the songs that I pick are more personal, not just out to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And when I hit that stage, I know this is my room right now, and I can control that. And that's an amazing feeling. And to realize all the power that can hold in terms of using, your voice, your reputation, my career that I've been able to build. Drag has allowed me to do some really cool things. So I am grateful for all the experience in performing. I'm excited to see now where that's going to lead, because performing can take a lot of different forms. But I know entertaining and performing is still what I'm here to do. That also goes with, as a hairstylist, what I love the most about that career is that when I do drag, I spend several hours getting ready and primping, going through this whole transformation. And when I would come home from a show, sometimes I would feel like, what was all this for? I mean, people applauded me, great, but what difference did I actually just make? And I was finding myself feeling really empty, and it was self-serving, and I kind of had allowed it to turn me into a bit of a diva. Not in a bad way, but just I would wait for someone to open a car door for me. I'd let people carry my bags for me. But also, people want a diva. They like a diva. Mm-hmm. You don't want Mariah Carey driving a school bus, right? You.
Were you diva without the wig?
No, there was definitely a separation. But my ex-husband one day finally was just like, "You've gotten really selfish." I didn't like that at all. So It's just hard. It's hard when you've created a character and people want that persona. You kind of have to start training them to treat you like that. Mm-hmm. But so I wasn't being my best self. But once I was aware of that, I don't let that happen anymore. I can carry my own bag, thank you, and take pride in doing it, because I can push it all out.
I can get a chainsaw,
you haven't lived until you see the drag queen in full makeup, hoisting her luggage in a car.
Can you talk a little bit about this kind of relationship of, we've kind of been talking about it throughout, but what you're speaking to there around identity and how it is asserted and presented, and then you have identities that you switch between drag and non-drag, and as we're talking, it's really striking me, already knowing this, but sexuality is so much more than sex, right? Mm-hmm. So much more than the act of sex, and these identities that you're playing with are a part of sexuality. And I don't really know what I want to ask here, but I just want to hear you kind of talk about this relationship of identities, multiple identities, and sexuality, and kind of navigating between all of that.
Yeah, it got confusing for a while when you're trying to figure out gender expression's one thing, but just trying to find my place in a lot of situations can be interesting. When I first started drag, the character Vanessa that I created was very different from me. And as it developed, because that's what happens truly for an artist, you start one place, but then you continually develop this character. I would say now she's got her own personality, her own fragrances, it's definitely a different facet, but I don't think I approach it with the same separation that I used to. I can like flip into Vanessa mode pretty easily, but I'm finding now I'm much happier allowing the whole of me to be in the whole of her. And I'm not so worried. Like, say, for instance, if you're hanging out at a bar after a show and you're still in drag and people are interacting with you, I don't feel so much pressure to act perfect all the time or act ladylike. Like, I'm a lot more relaxed now. So I think that's a very healthy thing, to let go of some of that constant separation. Because when I tried to keep them apart, I wasn't finding like full happiness in either side. When I would be in drag, sometimes I'd be like, I want more right now than to rip this wig off and just be comfortable. And sometimes conversely, I would be out as a guy and wish that I was dressed up and fabulous right now. So letting go of like the need for that separation has just allowed me to feel a little more comfortable all the time. Just not worry about it so much.
How do people like, I'm assuming that there's a difference in the people that are attracted to you in each character.
That's been a frustration in my journey, because yes, you will be at a show and there's the men that are into the trans girls, and then they find out though that I'm not trans, even though I can be very convincing. I still have, after 20 years, the best compliment ever is to have someone come up and be like, "You're a guy? Like, this whole time we thought you were trans." And that means I did my job well. But so it's like, I guess I get frustrated sometimes because I feel like I'm in the middle of a lot of things. When I was in drag, I was trans enough to be believable, but wasn't. So the fans of that wouldn't be into me. Or I would be too feminine and too believable that the gay boys would be like, "Oh, she's too much. That feminine energy is too strong." Because in other cities I've gone to, drag queens are appreciated, and people know that they're going to be handsome men outside of there too. They're able to see the separation of it. Here now, I feel the same thing. Even just like trying to date now, I'm too feminine for the guys that want feminine guys, or that want masculine guys, and I'm too masculine for the ones that want feminine guys. Which is so funny. This one guy the other day was like, "Yeah, but you've got like stubble." I was like, "And I've also got like long nails and can walk fiercely. Like, how feminine do I need to be for you?"
Right.
So I sometimes feel stuck in the middle of it. And I'm just trying to remember that you don't have to be anything but yourself. And not to try to, because I'm tempted at times to like go one way or another to try to get the attraction of somebody.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But I'm discovering now, especially recently, and especially using psilocybin as like more of a self-care approach to it, and to understand and heal myself. When I go out now, people respond to my vibe. And I'm noticing a lot more females responding to it, which has been very interesting. Maybe I should try girls again. It's the only thing.
Really? Like more women have been attracted to you, Philip?
Yeah.
Yeah, I should try girls.
I don't think they specifically, the other day we were at a hair show and a girl was like, "You are so beautiful."
Well,
And
isn't that
like,
always the thing? Like women love to be around gay men because.
typically, but
So what's different?
I think I never considered the fact that a female might be attracted to me because I always saw myself as so gay. But I think it's actually kind of cool because women do like compassion and sensitivity and all these things that I have in abundance. Like, I would make a great non-sexual husband. And I was honestly, I'm like, well, maybe I should consider that because I do love women. They're great. We'll just have our own little things.
Not having, having the
We can
sex
figure
on
that
itself. I have to ask, if you don't, I just have to ask, have you ever had sex as Vanessa?
No, when I was maybe 18, 19, just starting out, before she was a fully developed stage character, I tried to once, and it was so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. Because for me, the illusion of drag is a head-to-toe art. And if you do it well, it's a lot of fucking work, and it hurts, and you're gluing things on. And it's that's a head-to-toe. I have body pads from here to here, layers of tights. Drag is not sexual for me in any way. Yeah. Matter of fact, I've had guys flirt with me and like try to like touch me. I'm like, can't feel that. It's solid couch foam right there. Like,
are there better boobs than rice boobs these days?
Thank God. Thank God. Yes. Now there's silicone breastplates that are full on, like realistic.
Yeah.
Even clavicles in them and everything.
I was gonna say, some of that shit I've seen, I know that ain't rice bags.
They have a full silicone bodysuit from here to the toe that has everything.
Oh damn!
It's wild.
Oh wow! You just step into it.
What a time to be alive. But no, like never was interested in sex that way.
Yeah.
And at first, I think it was just because that would feel super awkward to me. Like, who wants to have like a little mini dress on and hairy legs? Like, I'm not buying that fantasy. So I don't quite understand the guys that like want a super feminine guy. I don't know. I don't know. I also have found myself, I had a realization at a show once. We were at a bar and this super, super Nelly, flamboyant gay boy was walking around. He was just acting so extra. And I was like, ugh. But why me in full drag? Why am I having that reaction to him? That was the first time I realized I have a lot of internalized homophobia, and it started at least like being like, it's okay to let people be who they are. But I was almost repulsed by his gayness, and that's so stupid to be in full drag and feel that way about somebody else.
Yeah, but I mean, we're all just like products of conditioning and environment, and so it's understandable, but it is fascinating to think that a gay man can have homophobia.
I think it's way more prevalent.
I've never considered that. Yeah.
I think it's like, I've noticed it a lot in the gay community here, where there's the bear community, right? Guys that are a little bigger and hairy, they form these like bear communities, and it's a whole thing. And a lot of it for them is they don't feel like they're appreciated among the skinny, pretty people. So they just go do their own thing.
Okay.
But I feel left out. I have never had body hair a day in my life. So I could go to a bear event, but they wouldn't accept me. Like, isn't that kind of weird? Like,
yeah.
Because I can't help.
That's weird. It's interesting.
My mannerisms. So like, where's my in the middle of the road group?
Wow.
That wants to be butch one day and dress up the next. But I mean, everyone needs to find community in their places, right?
Well, and how do you understand and distinguish, if at all, like sexuality from not just the act of sex, but like maybe attraction, or I don't know what it is I'm trying to get at. There's like this.
Because there's a lot of levels to it, right? There's mannerisms and how you're physically presenting. There's an energy factor. The big dick energy is a thing. Like, but women can have that too. So there's a lot of, and then the physical attraction to somebody. there's a lot of levels to that. And that's what I mean now. Like when I meet these straight guys now, like I feel more respected by them than the gay community sometimes. It's so interesting how far that's come. But I think there probably is so much religious trauma or trauma that happens for a lot of gay people in their coming out journeys that they don't know how to fully maybe accept somebody else, or like I was saying, like I was repulsed by somebody's gayness, but that was only because I had it beat into my head that that was wrong and they shouldn't be moving or talking that way. That voice came up.
Have you ever been repulsed by straightness? By someone's...
Not by straightness, by ignorance.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
things that are maybe displayed more by straight people.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But that's stereotyping. I know I've never had that reaction to somebody's mannerisms before. And it's only really the super flamboyant. But yeah, so RuPaul's Drag Race has been this big show that has exposed the mainstream to drag, which has been really awesome. Oftentimes we'll have viewing parties at different bars, and so people can gather and watch and interact and all that. And I see a lot of gay men being really critical. And I'm always interested from where that comes from, because I think there's some that is internalized homophobia where they're like, ugh. Or the ones that are like, I would never talk to somebody that does drag. And in my mind, if I'm paying bills and successful at something, and I come home and it all comes off, like I don't understand why that career is like looked down on.
Well, as a straight white man here, I mean, I'm going to put myself in harm's way and say that it kind of is reminiscent of what we've seen in Black culture, the remnants of segregation, slavery, the ongoing discrimination. There, in Jamaica, oh, dude, like there was such a stigma around darker colored Black people. When that's here in the U.S. as well, you see it. And so, like, when we have these just oppressive tropes that have been, embedded into our society, how can those who are oppressed also not, internalize those, like you're saying? So it's very understandable. And it seems to me that psilocybin and other psychedelics in particular have great potential to helping kind of work through that, heal from that, gain acceptance of self and others.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely think, as I know how much psilocybin has helped me connect to my authentic self. And in turn, I have finally been able to start truly authentically connecting with people and letting them see me. So that would be great if other people could get that same experience.
So, I mean, is there anything that kind of in wrapping up here, is there anything that you would, if you could speak to yourself 10 years ago or 20 years ago at some of your kind of most tumultuous points where you're really trying to understand who you are? Certainly there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other individuals here in the U.S. and around the world that are experiencing similar trauma, confusion, circumstances. Like, what would you say to that self back then, or to somebody who is maybe going through similar challenges?
I would probably look back at my 10-year-old self and say, being gay is not the whole world. I was fixated on that, and I think it is super important to understand who you are in that aspect of yourself, but you don't have to make that all you are. And things certainly would have gone differently. My path would have gone a whole different route if I had just chilled out on the fixation with needing to explore my gayness at the time. Um,
Well, that brings up a whole other conversation, really, about sexualization in children, and how we help everybody, every child, kind of healthily engage with their sexuality.
right.
Because I think that I experienced similarly the shame that was around sex just as a Catholic,
Yeah.
that it pushed me into an unhealthy focus on sexuality.
That part. I think that's why I started fixating on it was, somebody asked me once, are you mad at your parents? And like what things were like with my parents. And I wish at the time my parents had sat with me and said, we understand that this is what you think you are. And heck, explain their concerns, because I never really understood why they were so adverse to it. And now they've told me these, they grew up, or they, went through the AIDS epidemic. So of course you're going to be scared for your kid and want them to have a safe and healthy life. And without good role models, they didn't have a lot of hope that that was going to happen. But I wish they had learned with me instead of just trying to parent over me. I think that would have changed a lot. I think that would have made me feel less like they're trying to tell me who I am and they're trying to help me be who I am.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell a parent is it's okay to sit with your kid and be like, I don't have answers and I have these fears and I have these concerns. So be there with me. I felt alone a lot of that time. And I felt alone from my family, my siblings and everything. Like I felt disconnected from my family. And I still feel that way to an extent, which is, that makes me sad sometimes, but yeah, I think that would be what I would share with parents, especially with that. I think it's an important.
That's probably even more important to talk to, more valuable to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want to guide your kid. I mean, a lot of kids. I know me anyway. You tell me what not to do, that's what I'm going to go do.
That's the first thing. Yeah.
So it could have gone a whole different route, but I can't regret the journey my life has taken. Could have lived without a couple things, but it's all part of the recipe that makes you who you're going to become. So I think maybe that's why I have a contentness and like this new sense of purpose. It's like it was all for a reason. And I'm always really glad to be able to share my story because I feel like different people get different things from it that help them sometimes. So yeah, if any of the pain that I've gone through can help someone else realize something about themselves or be helpful in any way, I guess it's worth it.
Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for shouldering all of that. It's not anything that I would wish on anybody, but it does seem to be in ways, this is some of the price that we have to pay collectively to advance, and you've paid a lot of that debt for other people, I think, in the future.
Yeah.
Last question, last thing. What does psilocybin say to you?
What does psilocybin say to me? You're enough.
Oh,
That's how I always come to a place of feeling like, no, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I'm enough. Just how there's days you still, may not feel like your whole complete self, but even on my weekdays, I'm still plenty enough. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that is quite enough for this episode, I do believe. And
awesome.
Again, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Tune in next time.